Hello, I'm Jennifer Enriquez from Christ First Covina, and I just want to say a hello to all my fellow children's pastors and directors out there. The struggle is real with what we're going through, but know that you are making a difference. You may not see it every day because your children aren't with you and present on Sunday mornings, but know that all your efforts and all that you're doing is making a difference in the lives of children. Keep doing what you're doing, keep your knees bent in prayer before the Lord, and together we are going to make a difference in children's lives.
Good afternoon. This is Doug Mai. I'm the Developing Pastors Lead with Transformation Ministries, and I want to welcome you to another TM conversation. We're really glad to have you as a part of this particular webinar that's going to be focusing on effective children's ministry. But before we get there, let me simply say what's pretty obvious, that for a while, things that involved COVID-19 and the way that it impacted our churches were on the front burner. More recently, the events in our country that have to do with social justice and racism and the riots that are taking place have moved to the front burner. We want to be sensitive to what's taking place in our country, and as a result of that, we've arranged a special TM conversation this coming Thursday, so that's just 2 days from now. It's also going to be at 1 o'clock. We've invited Pastor Kenneth Curry and Pastor Ivan Pitts to be on this conversation and want them to share their hearts and to learn and gain some perspective so that we can leave that conversation having listened well, having learned, and then moving hopefully into a different kind of future. This is so recent that we're going to ask you to help us get the word out. And I can't remember exactly what we're calling it, but I think it's racism, repentance, and reconciliation. And so that's our conversation Thursday with Pastor Pitts and Pastor Curry. But I also want to say that the things that involve COVID and the quarantine we're in have not left us. And they're still very much a part of the way that we're doing church right now. Most of our churches are slow in coming back together, and for good reason. Children's ministry has been deeply impacted by everything that's going on. Summer plans have needed to be changed. And so this is an important conversation, and I'm delighted that we have presenters from 3 different churches in TM, 3 different churches that are at different stages of life that are needing to do children's ministry differently. And as we go on, you're going to have an opportunity to hear from Jennifer Enriquez at Christ First, from Lauren Johnson at Grace Church in Henderson, Nevada, and from Amy Hall at Beachpoint Church in Fountain Valley, California. Thank you to Elena Poppin for working behind the scenes to make this work. But what I want to do now is to introduce my friend, teammate, fellow host, Mark Barguer. Mark heads our church health. But Mark, I want to ask you before you introduce Jennifer, one of the things that you do on church health is to go into churches and assess them. How important is the way that they do children's ministry in that overall assessment?
Well, I can speak personally to that and also to our church health team. Thank you, Doug. Personally, let me just speak this. I grew up at Christ First Church, where I'm going to introduce Jennifer Enriquez in a few minutes, and it was so important to have a partner in ministry to actually train up our 3 children, actually 4, excuse me there, it goes fast. And it was so good to have partners that were training about Jesus, but we were doing it at home, and to say, wow, this is making a difference in our kids' lives as they were growing up in all ages, especially in the children's ministry. They started in preschool there and then all the way through, and it made a difference in their lives, and it made such a partnership with our parenting. In the churches we go to, it's very important, especially Well, let me just put it this way. Some of our churches, children's ministry has no validity at all. That's because they're all seniors. There are no children. For instance, Palm West, I'll mention in Arizona. I had a discussion with Jim Powell this week, the pastor there, and he said, thanks for not inviting me to be in this session today. I said, why? He goes, we don't have any kids. I said, I know. That's why you weren't invited. And we laughed a little bit, but that's a separate kind of ministry. But in most of our churches, the children's ministry is so key because, as you know, sometimes children bring their parents to church. They're the best evangelical reach to our community. The kids get dropped off by parents, and the parents say, well, we don't really need this, but it's important for you, for your values. And then they later end up joining the church. It works the other way around too, where parents are there and they bring their children to church. So it's so important to the health of a church, especially with most of our churches. I would say a big goal of our churches in church health is that they want to reach the 18 to 35-year-old group. Well, that's the ones with kids. That's the ones with children. And so we spend a lot of time looking through that and helping put strategic alignment together with the church health mission and vision and with the children's ministry. So very important. So thank you for reminding me of that, Doug. I probably went on too long, so let me get on to more important things and introduce my friend Jennifer Enriquez from Christ First Covina, my home church where I grew up, and we've known each other for a while, yay. And for the last 3 years, she's been the children's ministry, also director, the groups director for small groups there. She gave me a couple little tidbits about her that probably have nothing to do with this session, but I thought it'd just be fun to say. She has 3 adult children. She's got a new one on the way, a grandchild, congratulations, girl on the way. And she has some interesting hobbies. She travels to big cities and to rivers and waterfalls. I don't know what that has to do with children's ministries. Maybe some of those kids, you want to send them over the waterfall, or no, I'm sure you want to stand underneath. Quilting, sewing, good literature, feeding my friends good food. And I consider myself a good friend, so I'm looking forward to that food. But would you just welcome Jennifer Enriquez as she speaks to us about children's ministry?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm humbled and honored to get to come and just share what we're doing in our little corner of Covina, California. We are considered a small little bedroom community of about 40,000 people, but we're in LA County, so obviously we're surrounded by millions and millions of people. I'm hardly an expert, but I'm just happy to come here today and just share with you what I've been doing and what's been kind of working for us, and even some of the things that haven't worked so well. Each week, I have the opportunity to share a children's lesson after our online sermon. My goal is to keep those lessons somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes because, well, they're kids. And on a video, you want to keep it short and keep it simple and sweet. Since this started right before Easter was happening, we covered things like Easter, and I did it through doing the resurrection eggs. And then after that, I moved into the story of Noah. That was just what God impressed on my heart, was a very similar story to us being kind of confined, just like Noah was. So I was able to make a lot of correlations between what had happened to Noah and his family and what we were experiencing personally, so that they could see God understood where they were. We are now currently doing the story of Joseph, and I am loving that. I'm already 4 weeks into this series, and I actually don't have an end time set for it yet because, like I said, I only do about somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes. So that doesn't give you a ton of time when you tell a story. So one of my big encouragements to you children's pastors would be, don't think you have to do the same thing that you would have done on a Sunday morning as you would for an online service. It's different, and it's okay if it looks different. And it's okay if doing the story of Joseph takes 8 weeks. It's really okay for you to do that. If you're looking for some ideas on what children's lessons look like, I invite you to go to our YouTube channel, Christ First Covina. As a matter of fact, my friend and colleague and associate worship pastor, Tiago, is actually taking the time to pull off of our children's lessons out of our full online experience and he'll be creating a separate playlist for that. But if you want to see those and get ideas about what we've done, those are about the last 10 minutes, because again, they put me at the end. They let parents go off, and we kind of say that, but if we always say, if you have children in the room, invite them to come now. And we also use it as an opportunity to say, go get your kids. You know, Miss Jennifer is coming on. They've done a fantastic job of making me look far better than I actually am on video. We do have one person who's been doing the majority of our filming and editing. So I don't do too crazy with the editing options on there, because he's got a lot to do on top of being the worship pastor and doing music and such. So as many of us experienced when we first started this, I thought it was going to be a few weeks and then I'd have all those kids back and I'd be loving on them again. So I did something simple in the beginning, like simply mailing out a letter, and that included some activity pages. But pretty soon we realized this isn't ending and this is going to continue to go on. So I then even emailed parents a PDF package of things that they can run off and print for themselves at home. But when you do that, you have to know that not every family has a printer, and that's a real thing. So for the month of May, and to be able to allow our children to have something to do for Mother's Day, I actually put together a care package. This was the size of my care package box that I used. So it's not all that small. So I did have to think very strategically about what I would put in that package. And one of the things I did was I started off and included a letter with maybe some instructions that were going to be necessary for what they found in there, just sharing my heart, telling them I miss them. And then I included, you know, coloring pages that matched. There was an art activity that went along for Mother's Day. The directions were in there. And I varied these for ages of the kids, depending on the age of the kids. This was an elementary pack, and I had a separate pack that I would do for preschoolers. And then I did fun things like activities. I don't know about you, but I bet a lot of you already had your Easter stuff pre-bought. Maybe you had already gone through the dollar section at your stores and gotten things. Well, I did. I had pots and stuff that I was going to do for Easter, but it was going to be a live plant. Well, it's not a really good idea to mail a live plant or hope that parents were going to come pick those up. So we switched it and we did seeds, and it gave them an opportunity to plant something and grow something. I wanted them to have a Mother's Day gift to be able to give to their moms. So I had found these at the dollar store, and I wiped out several dollar stores in my area. But the other thing to realize is that, well, I know I was a mom that had paints at home. Not everybody did. So when you do a craft, one of the things I would really encourage is make sure you put all the supplies they need in there. And that may look like for you actually raiding your resource room or your resource closet, and maybe it gets obliterated. But you know what? Don't we all have an opportunity for a fresh start? And when the kids come back in, let's get fresh supplies and do those things. But let's also make sure our kids have what they need to do the things you send them home with, including if they're going to do a art or a paper project, include a glue stick. They may not have those things at home. And of course, you got to throw fun things in there like bubbles and pretzels, and maybe you find Pez dispensers and popcorn and a juice box, just fun little things. And it may seem simple and maybe it's not making much of a difference, but those kids were ecstatic. And you know what else I found out? The parents were just as ecstatic and so happy to come and collect those things for those kids so that they had them. I've also been doing Zoom meetings with my kids, with my elementary age kids. The success of those has actually been pretty small, but what I have noticed is that I've consistently had the same kids making sure that they're getting on, and it's been great to see those faces. And some of the fun things that if you can do a Zoom meeting for kids is that you consider doing scavenger hunts. Something as simple as, all right, I need you to run to your bedroom and bring me something yellow. And they all go tearing off and they leave the screens and they go running about and they come back with something. Go to the kitchen and bring me back your favorite snack. And when you do some of those things, it's what they come back with, because the truth of the matter is a Zoom call with elementary students is complete chaos. It is hard to hear. It's madness, but it's wonderful and it's fun. And I highly recommend that you try some of those things, because maybe they come back with their yellow stuffed animal. And so you get a question to ask them, who is that? Where did you get it from? And so you engage your kids in conversation. I've done things also. One of my fun ones that I just did this last time was I actually just held up a piece of paper. And again, I warn them and I tell them, kids, make sure that you are going out, and I need you to go get a piece of paper and a pen and come back. And then I did something just as simple as wrote a shape on a piece of paper And I asked them to mimic that on their piece of paper. And then I said, go, turn it into some art. And we did that. I did a couple of them that I did, like I did one that looked like this, and most people did mountains. But then I even got the kids to do it. One of the girls, it was her birthday, and she didn't know what to do. So I gave her an idea, and I said, hey, why don't you pick a letter? And of course, she picked the first letter of her name. So she drew an A on there, and we all took turns. So it's a great and easy way to engage your kids. And it was super simple, and it's so much fun. My Zoom calls last about 30 minutes. Because that's all about they're really willing to handle, because a lot of the times they take off and leave and they come running back, but it's a great way to engage. Doug had asked, and I apologize for this, did I send out care packages or have people pick them up? Yes and yes, I did it all. I set a date for parents to come and pick them up, but I also I did some drop-offs right on people's doors. Had I tried to mail out this box and what it is, even though it's a priority shipping box and it's a flat rate, it gets pretty expensive. We're not a huge church, but even that would have blown my children's budget. So it was actually cheaper for me to drive around and charge my church, a little bit of mileage on my budget rather than it was to mail all those out. But in truth, most people were really willing. They said, please, if you have anything to come have us pick up, we will get in the car and we'll come pick it up. They're like, even if it's a piece of paper, they wanted to be able to come out and do that. I've used our Facebook page to provide links to different craft sites that I found, or great pages like that, which I'm sure most of you have done. But one of the things that I think maybe some of us are all struggling with is that we think we have to have the answers and the ideas for everything. And that's not the case. I would say give yourself some grace and some patience. When you find something worthwhile sharing, share it. But parents have been overwhelmed with the amount of information that is out there. So don't feel like you have to be the one and total source for them. There's Pinterest, there's Facebook, they've got friends. So don't overwhelm yourself by thinking you're the only one that has to be that source of information for them. And one of the things that I've read online is, yes, the parents like the Bible stuff, but the kids love the fun stuff. So make sure that you're merging those two together. And if you're going to send out, things that are, biblically based, make sure you throw in some of the gummy bears or some of the silly stuff that makes it fun for kids, because let's not forget we're trying to reach the heart of a child, and a child is a child at heart. So our church currently doesn't have a reopening date. So we are just in the beginning stages of planning what that's going to look like for us.
Okay, fantastic. Jennifer, we're getting lots of, I'll call it hits from people saying, thank you for all your good ideas. And gee, is this going to be recorded? And I'll just remind people, it is going to be recorded. And since Jennifer talks so fast, like when I preach, most people don't get it. You have to hear it 2 or 3 times. And thanks, Jennifer, for all those ideas. Hey, I have one question for me personally. How do I get on that care package list so that I can get one of those? Because, you could drive down to San Clemente, drop it off, and that'd be
Absolutely.
great.
That's mileage I would love to tack to the church, and I'll have lunch on you when I'm there. Absolutely.
That sounds great. We'll work that out. But I didn't hear you talk about VBS or summer at all. Could you give us any kind of a feel? I know you're not open yet, and that might be hard.
Right.
And you're in the planning stages. What's the church thinking? What's your thoughts there?
So we were actually one of the first churches, one of 5 churches in Southern California that last year had been part of what's called Wind Shape Camps for Communities, which, if you don't know what that is a day camp experience that is ran by the foundation of Chick-fil-A. And we were one of those 5 churches, and we were super excited. In January, we were back in Atlanta getting our training and inspiration for us to host camp in August. Mm-hmm. And that was our VBS. We did not run a separate VBS last year when we did this. WindShape is an all-encompassing, all staff involved, all church involved sort of event, because it's big. It's really, really big. And because that was canceled for us by WindShape, and understandably so, WindShape has actually stepped forward, and they have created an online experience for kids. They are experts at what they do. And I am going to really be advising our parents to get their kids registered with WindShape on, because that was going to be our VBS experience. I'm recommending that they consider doing that. And then also, we are a church that does a go-away camp for our 2nd to 5th graders typically. And for obvious reasons, that also has been canceled for this year. But the team that puts on Light Seekers, it's a group of churches, actually TM churches, that are part of that. They are actually working on a virtual experience for our kids for that same week when camp would have taken place. So we will have 2 different options for our kids to choose from.
Jennifer, thank you so much for your ideas. I know we could talk further, and we'll have a chance for some more questions, but I think, Doug, you had a poll we wanted to take.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and great stuff, Jennifer. That was so helpful. We do want to just take a poll right now and are curious as to how you would assess the effectiveness of the children's ministry at your church during the COVID period. So that poll is going to go up. And if you would take just a moment to respond, one is it's been hard and we've probably lost ground. So yeah, it's hurt us. We've been able to hold our ground, so we've stayed even, or we've not only been able to hold our territory, but we've gained new ground. In fact, you think that some good things are happening and you're going to come out of this thing ahead. So if you would take some time to do that, and before we look at the results, let me simply say that our Transformation Ministries Conference is still being planned for October 15th and 16th. We expect to be at Hillside Community Church in Rancho Cucamonga. I think we have a great lineup of speakers and workshops. So put that on your calendar, October 15th and 16th, that we're still making those plans. Also, just a reminder, if you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A on the bottom of your screen. We'd love to hear from you, love to know what you're thinking, or you can use the chat feature and we'll be monitoring that as well. So I think we're probably at a place where we can look at our survey and let's see how you would assess what's happened with children's ministry during this time. Gosh, it's pretty even. That's probably one of the most even ones that we've seen. It's almost divided, 1/3, 1/3. A few of you are, the smallest third are those of you who think that you've not only been able to hold territory, but gain it. I'd love to hear from those of you who are in that camp. If you're on that call, why is it that you feel that way? I think that would be a helpful thing. You can use your chat feature to enter your thoughts there. But with that in mind, I want to introduce a friend of mine, and I really mean that, Lauren Johnson. I've had the privilege of serving on the same church staff with Lauren. And when I was serving as the lead pastor at Grace Church, Lauren and her family were really original members of the church. They came the first day, they got involved in ways that they never thought they would get involved. Lauren has a rich heritage of children's ministry in her family, and she is just a person with a great heart for God, a great heart for his church, and a great heart for kids. And is in a more unique situation probably because it's a smaller church, still been meeting in a school. But Lauren, we'd love to hear your story. What have you been doing during this time? What are you thinking as you look ahead towards the summer? Welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Doug, like he said, we've been on staff together, and he has been the beneficiary of my constant agony over not having a building and being like the smaller churches. And I can tell you, sorry you don't get to hear it firsthand anymore, Doug, but I think our size has been our biggest strength through this struggle. I have been able to do so many one-on-one things because we're a little bit smaller and we are young and feisty, and we're used to bending without breaking and brainstorming and being flexible. So some of the things that I switched in the first couple weeks was we typically do a video on Sunday morning, a little gospel project, like puppet story or some sort of video for kids. And I completely switched to teaching my face being what my people are seeing. And I feel like I got better reactions to that because if I'm completely gone from face to face and on computer, then I don't think the kids would even know like where I was anymore. So seeing my actual face, I think, has helped us a lot. I do a Facebook Live at the same time that our senior pastor does premieres his Facebook video. So we tell them that they can kind of go both ways. They can watch him and then watch me. They can watch me and then watch him, or they can do kids over here and adults over here and watch them simultaneously. And at the top of his sermons, he's always super encouraging and is like, hey, families, like, go watch your kids' stuff, and amps that up for me. So that's greatly appreciated. I like Facebook Live because I can have kids kind of typing at me, and I can answer them and greet them and say, oh, good morning, I see you guys on. And I can recognize the parents' names and holler out the kids' names, and they have fun seeing their name shouted out and kind of commenting back at me. For youth group, I've been doing more Zoom where everybody can talk. A really successful activity we had for young families was actually run by another organization I'm a part of, but can be utilized by anyone. We called it Porch Parties, and it was kind of an all around town scavenger hunt where we enlisted 10 people in our ministry who didn't have young kids to host a porch. And one of them was trace your hands on a bunch of construction paper and layer them up, and there's your little family picture for the day. One was we bought $50 worth of streamers, and it was like wrap up one of your kids into a mummy, and every single stop had just a fun, quick activity that could be done outside on the porch, social distance. We gave instructions like, if there's too many families on this porch, like wait in your car for a minute. Everything could be easily sterilized in between. And it took about 3 hours, and it was really just prep work and then the families doing the continuous work for the next 2 hours. At the end, they got one big photo op and a little goodie bag. I totally agree with Jennifer and all her little goodies in her drop bags. I think I have been like totally funding Oriental Trading Company with all that horrible junk that you hate taking home from birthday parties. But I gotta tell you, I see my kids on Facebook playing with the balloons I dropped off. I see the little mustaches that I put in their goodie bags, and they are loving it. And then hopefully their moms can just secretly throw it away when it breaks. Because of our size, I am able to do front porch deliveries probably at least 6 or 7 times throughout this. I just have super easy gift bags, and in it is a journal, and I'm sticking with my regular curriculum. And I'll say it took me 4 weeks to get through Joseph, and I wished I had more time. So at this point, I guess I could pause and go slower if I wanted to. So thank you for that encouragement, Jennifer. Our journals give you the lesson that we're working on, and then the kids can draw a little picture of that lesson. This is Joseph in a pit. And then I combined our regular activity sheets into their journals, which is different because usually I hand them the activity sheets. So their activity sheet is right next to that journal page. So their parents can quickly say, okay, here's your questions about the lesson that Miss Lauren just taught. Let's draw a picture. Here's the activity sheet. On the other side, there's a coloring page. So you kind of have 3 resources that you can review my lesson with, and you can use all of them. You can use one of them. I think some people use none of them, but I'm going to keep sending them out anyway. For Easter and Mother's Day, I dropped off extra stuff, and I totally agree. I am giving out glue sticks. I'm giving out popsicle sticks. I don't want there to be any reason that, like an obstacle that people can't dig around. They might not be a hoarder like me, so they don't have this stuff laying around their house. So I do like to include all that stuff. I'm gonna steal one of my mom's ideas. She is also a children's director down the street, and she is doing what she calls popsicle porch parties. And she goes and she sits on your front porch for 15 minutes and basically asks the kids, like, what is your favorite toy right now? What's something you learned right now? What is something cool? And she videotapes them and then creates a video at the end of the week with 10-second blurbs of this kid learned how to ride his bike, this kid lost a tooth. And so then the kids can go and look on their Facebook page and see their little face riding their bike or losing their tooth in their little blurb video. And that's been really fun and engaging for that church. I have not done this for little kids, but for my youth group, I've been dropping off birthday deliveries, and I could do it for kids, but there's more of them. I like to stand in their front yard and sing happy birthday at the top of my lungs, and everybody gets a really big kick out of it. And I think that is really fun. So again, that's something that I'm able to do a little bit more because I only have about 12 families. So I can show up and pop up and wave and even make like those awkward 4th and 5th grade boys laugh and hang out. Some things that have not worked for me the first time, but I thought they were good ideas, so I might try them again, is our kind of like unit verse. We had a video and said, hey, if you can videotape your family saying our unit verse together, Miss Lauren will come and bring you popsicles or candy or whatever. I think if maybe I pursued that a little bit more, it might have turned out better. So I'm going to try that one more time. We also had a fundraiser for an underprivileged ministry in our community, and involved the kids by doing the chores, and their parents were donating the money. Going forward, our summer plans, just like everyone else's, are up in the air and probably will be canceled. But at this point, we're about an hour away from driving up to a much cooler mountain, and we are kind of doing a day camp there that we do every single year. It's kind of our big summer kickoff. And I think we're just going to be able to make little adaptations this year to make it a little bit safer for everybody. Instead of having a Bible at each station, we're just going to say each family gets a Bible to travel with. So there's just less hands on different things. We're just going to have to bring a little bit more supplies, more scissors and more glue sticks. So each family gets a pack that they travel with to this activity and this activity, instead of the activity station having the actual supplies. So just little tweaks on stuff we're already doing. It's an outdoor picnic area. We have few enough people that it's legal, and we can keep as distance as possible in the outdoor air. I think is going to be completely doable in a couple weeks. We don't currently have plans we don't know when we're starting church yet. I have heard of a handful. If there's any school churches listening, I have had a couple friends that go to school churches partner with churches with buildings and use their space at a different time on Sunday or on Saturday. So if you have a partnership that you could build through that, I am seeing that with other friends in ministry. When I have kids in person in my church, we have family Sundays where the kids are with the adults and we're all worshiping together. And some people take advantage of that, and that's one of their favorite discipling, family building Sundays. And then some moms leave swearing they're going to kill me and they never want to sit through church with their kids again. So I think if that's what church looks like, activity sheets, obviously, maybe a little bit more specifically focused to our lesson. I don't know how I feel about this yet, so I'm going to say it, but I don't know if I'm going to do it. Bring your own device, bring your headphones, and the kids can watch and listen to our recorded kids message during the adult sermon. I'm conflicted on this, so I'll get back to you and let you know what I end up deciding. I think that is it.
Excellent. Hey, thank you, Lauren. I do need to tell you, I'm glad I don't have a birthday coming up because I really don't want you in my front yard singing very, very loudly at that point. Let me ask you this. Mark mentioned at the beginning that he was thankful that the church was a partner to him as they were raising their children. I know that for you and for many of our churches, that's the value we have, that the primary place of discipleship is in the home, that as churches, we are trying to come alongside the parents. Question for you, how do you feel like the parents have done during this time? Do you feel like they've been responded the way? Just reflect on that a little bit for us.
I think I'm always a little disappointed with a lack of at-home discipleship. And my husband likes to remind me that not everyone was raised by a children's minister. I, in other ministries, teach moms at-home discipleship, and take that Deuteronomy 6 of when you're walking by the way and you're sitting and you're resting and you're lying down, and really trying to incorporate that into everyday life. I'm going to say that they are, because like maybe 50%-ish, I do see them interacting on Sunday mornings, and I know that the kids couldn't do that without their parents' Facebook. And I do get a lot of grateful parent texts thanking me and telling me specific stories on my kid said this today from the lesson, or my kid brought this up in conversation later. I feel like that's definitely, I don't think I'll ever be content with where we're at, and I'll always be pushing for that. But I do like that they're trying.
Yeah. No, thanks. I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much for what you shared and just for the ideas that are there. I know Mark is going to lead us in another poll and then introduce our last presenter. So go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Doug. Hey, Lauren, so good to hear from you too, especially since last time we met at your church, I was doing a secret shopper, as you reminded me before this session, and you actually shooed me out. I was trying to get in and infiltrate your children's ministry, and you did exactly what a children's ministry leader should do, is you got the shotgun. No, you didn't chase me with that, but you got me out of there, and that was great. It was good to see you again. We're going to take a poll at this time, and as that comes up on the screen, you can start working on that. The question is there something you have learned or started doing during the COVID quarantine that will impact your children's ministry in the future? And you can answer that, no, not really, or maybe, but it's pretty small, or yes, and it will be a significant help. And we'll let you work on that for a minute. And I'll just mention, while you're working on that, next week's webinar that you'll want to come and be part of, I'll be co-hosting on how should we measure success in this time that's not normal times anymore. It's like, what's going on with COVID and how do we really measure success? So we're going to kind of explore what realistic goals church leaders can set for their churches, and what does thriving look like during this season. And I've got a couple of, actually 4 pastors will be there. Jim Powell from Palm West, Tate Crenshaw from LifePoint in Banning, Ivan Pitts from Second Baptist Church in Santa Ana, and Randy Ponder from Morro Bay. So we'll have 4 presenters to try and help us get kind of a handle on where we are in that success area and how can we measure success during this time. So it looks like we're at about a minute, and it looks like everybody's just about voted. So let's take a look at the results. It's pretty significant that the answer, most of all, 45% say yes, it will be a significant help to some of the things you've started during the COVID quarantine for children's ministry. So it looks like it's had a significant impact for a good portion of you. There's quite a few though that hasn't really had an impact, or a very small impact, that actually, if you added those 2 together, would be larger than the 45%. But we're seeing some new things happen in all areas of ministry in our churches. So that brings me to our last presenter, and not our least, Amy. And Amy, you and I met, I think, 4 years ago when I was doing a church health restructure for Beachpoint. I think we did an interview. Do you remember that?
We did, I do.
Yeah, and I just remembered that as I'm introducing you, so I should know you better than what you put on this piece of paper. But that was fun to get to know you. Amy's at Beachpoint Church and was the children's pastor for 12 years. For the last 4 years, after our restructure, I guess, you got that big promotion that we were talking about.
I did.
Thanks to your efforts, the family ministry pastor. And I know you're passionate about kids coming to know Jesus and that their lives are being transformed and inspired, and also empowering parents. And I know that because you wrote that on this piece of paper here, but also because I've met you. But you have 4 crazy kids at home, including a crazy, no, it doesn't say crazy husband. You said your husband Gabe.
No, that's accurate.
Raising them to be disciples of Jesus. So you got your homework at home and at work. And now, of course, that's all together. So tell us how that's working in this new environment, and what you're learning and what you can pass on for help.
Yeah. You know, just like all of you, it's been a really crazy time as we have adjusted and thought we were going to be online exclusively for a few weeks, and a few weeks have turned into a few months, and we're not entirely sure what that's going to look like moving forward. One of the things that was really important for us, I think, as a team to own was our strategies that we had been using prior to the pandemic were by and large working, which is why they were our strategies. And having to move online meant that a lot of our effective strategies were kind of thrown out the window without a lot of opportunity to think about it before it hit us. And so Beachpoint's probably like a lot of your churches, we have gone through trial and error as we've moved kids ministry from very in-person focused to online focused. So in the beginning, we did some crazy things where we were posting content for kids almost every day of the week in the beginning, as parents were trying to figure out, like, my kids are at home and they're going to be home for a few weeks and then they're going back to school, so there's no distance learning plans. And we realized really quickly that was not healthy for our staff to run at that pace, nor was it really helpful for the parents who were, like some of our other panelists said, just really bombarded by the content. So one of the effective things that we've done is we've really streamlined it. We focused on Sunday morning content for our kids, which we put up on YouTube. And there is teaching from our children's pastor. And then there's opportunities for parents to interact with the content with their kids, with games and crafts and things like that. And, you know, I really appreciate what both Jennifer and Lauren said as far as thinking through, like, what supplies do your kids have at home? So we've really moved away from extravagant kind of crafts and made it really simple. Like, do you have a paper plate and a marker? You can do the craft. And then also, like, thinking through, like, what games are available to play that go along with the lessons, right? Because you don't have classes of 20, 30 kids anymore. You've got mom and dad and maybe a couple of kids. So how are we playing these games? So that was like a big switch for us, even just thinking how we did our content. One of the things that I think Beachpoint does well is that we write our own kids ministry content, not because we think we're awesome curriculum writers, but because we really care about families being on the same page. So whatever's happening in big church on Sunday, we're teaching it at a kids ministry level. And so that actually has really been super beneficial during this time where parents really are the ones who are doing the vast majority of discipleship to kids. So they've heard it from our teaching team, and now they have an opportunity to interact with it with their kids. So we're on the same big idea, and maybe in kids ministry, we're just doing a point of that. That's been super helpful to get those parents engaged. But I think like the other panelists that we have today, we did in the beginning, we had a bunch of our Easter supplies that we had already purchased. So we said, let's go ahead and repurpose these for something else instead of our big Easter egg hunt on campus. That's not happening anymore. So what are we going to do? And we do something with each series in kids ministry called Faith at Home, where each series we're giving out some sort of hands-on learning experience with a memory verse that we're encouraging families to do together. So instead of like a weekly take-home page, it's like a series-long take-home activity that we encourage families to do together. So the first one we did during the pandemic was for Easter. And we did, basically it was like an Easter egg scavenger hunt. So they got a carton with a dozen plastic eggs in it, and they opened each egg for the 12 days leading up to Easter. There was a verse and like a little like riddle that they had to solve. And then they took a picture as a family and they posted it to Instagram with a hashtag. And we delivered, our team was so like, yes, like sign us up for it. We delivered 100 bags to families in our community with like all the supplies in it, including like, here's a bag of Easter eggs with candy and prizes that were supposed to be for the Easter egg hunt. Why don't you guys have an Easter egg hunt in your backyard? And we had a good number of families buy in and participate that way. And so it also helped us, which we didn't really like think through strategically, but it was just like a happy happenstance that we were then able to get all these families following our Instagram account. So our communication to those families increased dramatically. So as we've moved forward, what we've realized is one, simple. Let's just be simple and aligned, because the simpler we are and the more aligned we are, the better buy-in we have. And then the second thing is to continue to really kind of have the expectation through Faith at Home that families are going to be growing together. And we know that that's not going to be perfect. And we know that there's going to be a lot of families that don't participate that we wish would. But instead of saying like, well, if we only have 40% participating, like that's a fail, we say no, like we have 40% participating that weren't before. And so really figuring out how we can empower and equip these parents in the middle of this moment has been significant for us with that as well. So that's been a big part of how we've been moving forward right now. Unfortunately, our summer plans are probably postponed for at least 12 months, right? And so we normally do a really big on-campus vacation Bible school. And it probably isn't a good idea to cram hundreds and hundreds of kids and hundreds of volunteers into small spaces this summer. So instead, what we're doing is we're recycling. We write our own vacation Bible schools. And so we're gonna recycle one that we used about, 10 years ago, and are going to be providing ways for families to experience Vacation Bible School together. It might be the timing of it where they can invite another family to participate with them, some other kids to come and participate in their homes, but it's going to be a mix of digital content and then parent-led stuff. And then we started Zoom meetings. Way to go, you children's pastors who are doing Zoom with kids, because it is wild. We started Zoom meetings with our kids probably 4 or 5 weeks ago now. And yes, it's bananas, but they are so excited to see each other's faces. And we do get some really good discipleship moments from that. So along with that, what we're doing is we're going to have like life group, small group time during our VBS day, where they will Zoom in with a kids ministry leader and we'll lead them through a portion of the day. And we'll have boxes that they can come by the church to get with all of their supplies, everything that they'll need to do VBS at home. So that's really where we're headed right now. We're bummed because we joke, or we say, actually, I don't joke, I actually believe it. Summer's the best season of the month in the church. VBS is the best week of the year. And so we're bummed that it's different this year. But we're looking forward to the opportunity to not stray from our mission, which is to develop these kids and these families, right, as authentic followers of Jesus. And so while our strategies have changed, our mission hasn't. And so trying to keep those two things in tension has been very helpful as we've figured out what our next steps are going to be along the way. So that's kind of where we're at with that. As far as regathering is concerned, we're in the process of figuring out what that's going to look like for us at Beachpoint. And what we are pretty sure about is, as of right now, that's like another phrase that we have really adopted in this moment. As of right now, in this minute, we aren't anticipating that we're going to have kids ministry or youth ministry on campus when we first begin to regather. That'll be something that comes down the road. But we're trying to figure out, like, what does that look like to do it safely, to do it effectively. And we really understand too that without kids ministry and youth ministry on campus, that changes the dynamics of how families worship. So that's been a big thing. And then like one last thing that has been significant for us that we didn't really realize in the beginning was, we now, because our services are being streamed into living rooms, right, on Sunday mornings, we have kids in big church that weren't there before. They used to go to kids ministry, but now they're sitting in big church. And so we've been super blessed with a team that just really cares about working together and is very collaborative. And our senior pastor works really hard to make sure that each week we're at least mindful of the fact that we've got young kids that are experiencing the service with their parents and thinking through opportunities to kind of engage them along the way as well.
Mm.
So we're learning, we're figuring it out, we're adjusting. We're talking a lot about, like, for right now, moving forward, we'll figure out what comes next. But for right now, this is what it looks like for us. So that's kind of it in a nutshell for where we're at.
Amy, thank you so much. You had a lot of information there. I know we're seeing a few questions coming in, but maybe I can help. You said something about simplify and alignment. And I just want to maybe grab onto that statement because you do something unique at Beachpoint, and that is you write your lessons every single week to Pastor Bill's sermons in the church. And has that, do you think that's simplified and aligned you even better with your kids and your parents more because you're on that kind of a format during this COVID pandemic? Has it helped?
I think that's been very significant for us as we have moved forward. And not to confuse simple with easy, right? Because it's more challenging to write our curriculum this way. But it is so much better as far as like empowering and equipping the parents to continue the conversation with their kids, to help lead their kids in it. And so it's not like, okay, in church today, we heard, you know, whatever the lesson was. And in kids ministry, they talked about Jonah and what was their big idea with Jonah. And I don't even know how to follow up with that. So instead, all of us being on the same page has been so great. But that also comes from a team and a senior pastor that are really committed to each other and the collaborative process, which is huge. And, you know, that wasn't easy to get there, but it's been so worth it. And I would not want to move backwards with that, because it really helps us bring the parents on board because of that.
I've got a question just that I'd like each of you to respond to, not at length, but just what's been the most encouraging thing for you in the ministry that you've done during the season? And then what's the discouraging thing that you've had to wrestle with? And in any of you, Lauren, Jennifer, Amy?
I mean, I think it's really the discouraging part is not to get to see their faces every week in person. It's hard to know how your stuff is always hitting. Like, is it impacting? Is it not impacting? To not see their faces like light up and get it, or like not track with you. That's been super hard to lose out on kind of that relational component for sure. But I think what is encouraging is that the families are still seeking out kids ministry, you know, and I think, like, to Lauren's point too, you know, that they're accessing it. So I think that's encouraging in this moment as well.
I think I would agree. I think it's been hard to know with what you're putting out there. Are they watching the lessons? Are the kids actually the ones getting to see this? Are they taking advantage of, you know, what you've done? Because you can send emails out and you just don't know if parents are taking the time. You know, you put the effort in and you just kind of, you wonder. But then I think just about the times that I'm just like so discouraged, and is any of this making a difference? I will get a parent who will post something and they've tagged us in it, and I can see that the kids are doing the lesson and having fun. And I'm just like, and my heart just swells, and I'm like, okay, if one kid got it, then it was all worth it. And even we're a very multi-generational church, and we have, because we're such an old church, we have a big segment of our church that is our older friends. And I think what's been encouraging is to see the older friends reach out to me and just say, thank you for your lessons. We stick around and we watch and we love what you're doing. So just even getting the encouragement from other church members who are noticing what we as a staff are doing is making a difference when you can't have that face-to-face, you know, like add a girl, add a boy. And not that's what we do it for, but we do know that's kind of what gives us the extra, you know, punch in the shoulder to keep going.
I think with the rest of life, the less likes and hits and views I get, the more discouraged I am. So I need to be smart and stop counting them. But the most encouraging thing overall is my most fringe families have been the ones who now in COVID life are the most like show up the most consistent, they're seeking the most, they're texting me the most. And my solid families who I thought like, oh, I'll rely on them to be my eyeballs and views and people, they've kind of, I know they're still solid, but they're not paying attention to what I'm doing. But those fringe people are really learning and absorbing a lot of Jesus. And that is really, I couldn't ask for more there. So that's
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Mark, you have a question?
I do. I was wondering, our churches in general are seeing more people come to services when it's online than we saw when they were on site in general. Wondering if that's your experience in children's ministry as well. And if so, has that made it more complex, or have you had a chance to do more, reaching out to new families that way? What have you seen in the numbers of people coming and what their reactions are?
I probably have equal amounts of people that go to our church and people who don't go to our church viewing on Sunday mornings. I would say I don't have my full regular attendance, but I do have a handful of people who weren't showing up or actually go to other churches, but their church isn't serving them the same way.
I think it's difficult to understand what the number of viewers means. And so our kids ministry content is not live. We post it on YouTube, and so families can watch it at different times. One of the unique things that we heard this last week was a family who, I don't know how they've managed to miss it all these weeks, reached out and said, we just saw that Beachpoint's putting out kids ministry content. That's great. My kid's watching all of them from when you guys first started. And so to see how old lessons get fresh views, that's interesting. But I think that we don't really know how to interpret that data yet.
And we're in the same bag probably, is that because my content has been coming on right after the sermon, we can kind of monitor a little bit when we're using our online platform or even our YouTube. When we're doing our premiere parties, we can kind of see how many people maybe drop off, but we will see a significant number of people who do stick around. But again, are those families, or are they just people who want to watch a children's lesson? It's really hard to gauge all of that when you don't really know who is behind the number.
Yeah.
You know what? This has been such a helpful conversation. And I just thank you, presenters, so much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. We want to give you an opportunity just to share a final thought. So, Amy, you're on my screen right now. How about if I start with you, and then Lauren and Jennifer, but just kind of a final thought, that whatever it is that you is on your heart at this point.
Yeah, I would just say keep up the good work. Don't overcomplicate it. If we walk away with our kids knowing one or two essential truths about Jesus and who he is and how much he loves them, then we've done a great job. And so I would just say keep up the good work and keep it simple as you move forward.
I would just say that what we're used to is unique to just the last few generations, and that discipleship and our mission hasn't changed, and to just focus on your mission and not how you're used to doing things.
I think I would just encourage us to remember that we're not the only source that parents have. There's a lot of information out there, and to continue to make those relational connections. Most people, I think, come to Jesus because of someone they know, and someone who was relational with them and authentic, and shared their heart and showed that they were genuinely interested in them. So I think we need to continue to be able to make sure that our kids know we care about them.
Well, you are all doing a wonderful job. Thank you so much for your ministry. Thanks for being a part of our time together. For those of you who are listening into this conversation, I want to remind you that it has been recorded. You will receive an email with the link if you want to look at it again or pass it on to someone. You can also find it at our TM website, that's tmchurches.org. It will be posted there in a couple of days under the resource. section, so you can go there and get it, as you can with all of the previous webinars we've had. And then finally, I want to remind you that this Thursday, so in 2 days at 1 o'clock, there's going to be a Zoom meeting that we're simply calling Racism, Repentance, and Reconciliation. We are having that with Pastor Ivan Pitts and Kenneth Curry. Invite all of you and others that you'd want to invite to be a part of that as we listen and learn and seek the face of God together. So thank you for what you're doing. God bless you. The kingdom is advancing, and it's going to take little steps, but God's going to make it happen. So thanks again.